I will give you a very short history about when my family and the Swedish Roma came to Sweden. It was in the beginning of 1800. They came to Sweden, and my family came from the north part of Sweden through Finland, and they got into Sweden. And they was settled in Sweden, and of course they was living in tent in that time. My family was a special family because they was one of the first families who lived in one house, but that was 1946, quite early. But mainly the Roma, they didn't got any apartments before 60s. You know? So it's another story. But anyway, I will tell you about my grandfather. And my grandfather's name was Johan Dmitri Taikon, and his Roma name was Milos. He was a person who was very difficult to say in English, but he had a view, longer view for the future. And he discovered very early in the years
he was a visionary.
Yes, visionary. He was a visionary. And he saw that the Roma couldn't have this kind of life as they have in Sweden. So he started to work very early to try to have a better situation for the Roma. And he started already in the 30s, 1930s about, and was giving out letters to different authorities, the church, and even to the king, to have audience to go there and visit them and to speak about schools, housing, and work. Because the Roma here in Sweden, it's nearly impossible to have this Roma life when the winter is very cold and they're living in tents and so on. So he was speaking about they need houses as everybody else. We are speaking about tent. There are different kind of tents, you know. And in this time, when they was traveling around, they needed lighter tents. Means that the tent was built on 3 poles. And it looks like Indian tipi or a Same kota, with name of Same kota, and it was built on 3 poles, and they covered it with a kind of a stuff. And inside they had the possibility to make some food and so on. So that, and later on, you know, they start to build tents more like looking like a house, and it was more like a small barrack, but it was still in stuff. You know, when you are traveling, you know, you need all the pieces in one place, you know, so it was quite difficult to find all those wooden pieces to put them together to one construction. And I can show you one film later on how we did this. So it was a special way to do it.
How many people fit in the tent? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, it depends, you know, because our tent, when I have to tell you first, I never been living in one tent. I never been living in a Roma camp or something, settlement, because later on I maybe tell you that we moved over to this place called Tanto in Stockholm, where where we lived, and I was only just newborn when we came. I'm born 1945, and we came to Tanto 1946. So my childhood was in Tanto.
And that was the very first house for most of your family members to live in?
Permanently, because it was before they could rent, in the wintertime they could rent an apartment and so on for the wintertime. But this was a permanent house in Taikon. I will show you the pictures later on. My grandfather, he was a visionary, and he saw that we couldn't live in this way as the Roma did, you know. So they need the Roma didn't have any entrance to the school, and they didn't have the entrance to the labor market because they were handicraft worker by themselves, you know, and there was they didn't. I mean, their Roma handicraft didn't fit in the society, so people had to get to the Roma to get some help, because the Roma in that time was coppersmiths. In summertime, we was living in a special place outside of Stockholm. It was a Roma settlement for summer.
Did it have a name?
Yes, the part of that place was Sköndal. It's a part of Stockholm. But anyway, we was living there in summer times, and it was not only my family who lived there, it was other Roma who lived there also. So it was quite big.
Other Calderas Roma?
Yeah, all the Calderas, relatives to our family. Means that my grandfather and my father's brothers and even Karolína Taikonem and Rosa Taikon lived over there. But anyway, my grandfather was speaking with lots of authorities. Means that he spoke to one of the person who was working at the social fair, and they became very close to each other, and he said, no, you see, we can't live like that. And he started to speak with the city of Stockholm, and his name was Sven Andersson. And he started to speak with the Stockholm city and said, no, we have to do something for the Roma. They can't live here, they don't care what it is. This person, Sven Andersson, he started to speak to the city, and they decided to do something about it. And they found a house in a place with name of Tantu, and it was a very big house. It was a kind of residence for a high person or something. And it was a big area, quite good area, but all the Roma couldn't live there. So they took their wagons in that time and put it around the big house. So the family was together. But anyway, in the house it was, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 families who lived in the inside of the house, and the other one was living outside. I can tell you it was just about 20 children. And you can imagine if it was 5 families who had 3 or 4 children. My family, my sisters and brothers, we was 9 sisters and brothers in our families. I mean, it was a quite big family, and that's why we was the biggest one. We got the biggest apartment also in the house.
So it was quite a big community then?
Yes, it was a very good and tight community.
All families?
All families, all families. But all families was relatives. There were Taikons, all of them. I had a very happy childhood. It wasn't poor or anything. Because in this settlement, it was so many children. And we made lots of games and so on. So it was a very good life. And I would say that this settlement, is the most famous and filmed settlement. Filmed by television, filmed by documentary filmers. They also made a film with name of It was a film made by Arne Sukstorp. He's a very famous person. And it was recorded in Tanto. So that is also possible to see that film. I would like to present this book. It's very important that we are speaking about it. This is a dictionary, as my grandfather, Johan Dimitri, that he was producing. I don't know how to say producing or not, because he was an analphabetic one. So you have to understand this. You have to know the history from the beginning. As I told you, my grandfather was an informant in Nordic Museum, and the intendant at that time, the ethnologue, was Carl Herman Tillhagen. In that time, he came to Tanto and started to speak to my grandfather and wanted him as an informator at the museum. My grandfather went over there and he said, "Yes, I can work for you, but you have to work for me." "What can I do for you?" "You have to highlight my language and we have to put it down in text." Mm-hmm. So they start to do it.
And this is the
result of the language of the Swedish coppersmith Johan Dimitri Taikon. It's over 140 pages with grammar. Mm-hmm. And there is over 200 pages with words. Mm-hmm. And there is an English index where you can look for them. And my grandfather died 1950, and this one was finished 1964.
Oh.
So he
didn't see it finished?
No, he didn't see it finished. It's still a reference material in the universities. And also I would say how my grandfather, how fantastic he was. He was a very good fairy tale paramichar. This intendant, Carl Herman Tillhagen, he understood that it's very important. Mm-hmm. Because my grandfather had 200 fairy tales in his head. And then he started telling those stories to Tillhagen. And then they make this book, and it means, the name is Taikon berättar, Taikon
the
is
narrator.
telling.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Taikon
and is it in Swedish or in Romani?
No, this is in Swedish.
In Swedish.
In Swedish.
Uh-huh. So your grandfather told the stories in Swedish.
And he put them in text. My grandfather started to work with the Nordic Museum, and Mr. Tillhagen, he was researching about the family and so on, and the meaning of my grandfather's work together with Tillhagen was to give information about the Roma culture.
Do you remember your grandfather?
Oh yes, I was 5 years old when he died.
So what do you remember? What can you tell us about him?
I remember him as an patriarchalic person, high respected among other Romas. He was a krisitori, as we say, and people came down to our camp where we was living, and they were asking, and he was advising, and he also knew all the Roma in Sweden, and all the Roma knew him, of course. Maybe we have to explain what is a kris, because I would say that Roma in Sweden have been using the wrong word when they are speaking Swedish to explain what is a kris. A kris is a meeting to solve trouble in the family problems. But in Sweden, when Roma try to explain what is a kris, they say that it is a trial. And that is not good, because it isn't a trial. We don't have any judges and so on, and we don't have any prison, so we can put people in prison. But from the first, it is a family solution. Take, for example, there is a couple, young couple, who have problem in the family. Maybe the boy is out on the nights or drinking or something, or beaten his wife or something. Then she go to his father, or to her father maybe, and say, I am beaten and my husband is always going out and so on, doesn't take care of the family. And then he go back to the boy's father and tell the problem. And it start with a divano, means that they start with, to start to speak. And if they can't, how should I, if they can't be, yes, if they can't find a solution, maybe the girl's father say, okay, let's have a crease and we will have the other people to decide what to do. Because that is not good. Your son doesn't take care of the family. My grandfather, Milos, he was agitating for school, housing and work. That was his three most important issues he was speaking about. And as he was literary, he couldn't read and write, so he asked other people to help him to write. And he was writing letters to different bishops and priestess and even some schools, and told them that we will traveling around and we will be in your city and we will live in that place when we are coming. Can you please help us to send someone to teach our Roma children? And then it would look very strange if his grandchildren didn't go to school. So I am born 1945. So I went to the school when there was time to go in school, because we was settled now in this time. So we had an address, we had even telephone in the house, you know. So it was we was settled, as I was sort of say. That means that all my family went to the school.
And at the time when you started to attend school, were you the only Romani child in attendance?
Yes, but I wasn't the first, because my other sisters, because I in that time I was the youngest one, and we was 9 brothers, 3 brothers and 6 sisters. So we was 9 children in the family, so they went to the school before me. So I went to the primary school for 2 years, and then I changed another school, and that was a little bit longer, but still a real folk school, as we call it.
How were you received as a Romani child in the 1950s, I expect?
Yes, but you know, children are very cruel. Of course, they were cheating me as a Roma, because they knew that I was a Roma. I wasn't so nice dressed as they were, and they knew about my name, and if I go in school near where I was living, of course the parents and the other one knew that he's living in the Roma camp downstairs, you know. So always cheating and problem and fighting, because always in one school or in one class there are always someone who wants to make trouble, and I'm the best in the school, in the class and so on, and cheating and start to make a fight. And also, you know, boys are fighting, and of course we had to make this fight. And after that fight we became very good friends.
What was your mother tongue at the time when you started to go to school? What was your mother tongue?
I spoke Swedish, of course, but also Romanes. And my grandfather and grandmother, most my grandfather, she was speaking Russian to me. So in that time I understood Russian and I gave back in Swedish. And she was, she didn't, she knew and understand Swedish, but in a bad way. When she couldn't really speak and explain herself very good. But my grandfather, I have some recordings from him, and I was wondering, how could he speak so gently and so aristocratic when he was speaking?
In Swedish, you mean?
Swedish, yes. When some Roma today speak very bad Swedish.
May I ask, you say your grandmother spoke Russian. Yeah. Russian was her mother tongue.
Yes.
Your grandfather spoke Swedish, but also Romany, obviously.
Yeah, of course. He could speak many languages. And I would say it's hard to say, but you know, to speak about yourself is very hard, you know. But I can be understandable on 6 languages. I never read them. I never learned them. I don't know how to read and write them. But still, I can be understandable. For example, now English. Never study English.
Okay, let's go back to your school attendance. Oh, yeah. What were your favorite subjects? What did you like studying?
I didn't like. I will start what I didn't like. It was to. Oh, that's the destiny. I didn't like to write. My handwriting was very bad. And I couldn't draw. And multiplication, no good. I had, you know, you had us in your, I don't know what you call it, in your finished paper on the school you have kind of degree of how much.
Results, yeah.
So, the result, yeah. And for multiplication I had the very lowest. But what was interesting for me, it was geographic and it was history. And some gymnastic, maybe winter sports more than something else. And yeah, to hear stories, someone else reading stories for me, the same as the history and so on.
So how many years of institutional education did you have?
In that time, the normal school went out by 8 years, the 8th class. And I went to the 8th class and finished it. Mm-hmm. But I didn't have, I have to say, I didn't have good results. I didn't have that. And when I graduated school and I saw my results and so on, I was thinking, doesn't matter. I will never sit on an office. Anyway, so I will never do that. But 1.5 years after I finished the school, I was sitting in the office. Because I start after the school to with a scrot dealer, iron metal dealer and so on. And he saw that I was a very good worker. And sometimes he had to go away and he said, Fred, can you please take care of this and this? And he saw that I could imagine. So in 3 years, I was running the whole company after I went to the school. And then I started 2 other companies by myself. We have to know that the Roma work, the Roma handicraft work, didn't work anymore. They was putting 10 on the copper, inside of the copper's pans or whatever it was, and they was doing. And it became unmodern because it came new materials, it came aluminium, and it came inox, and they couldn't repair those. So they had to start a new kind of work.
Retrain.
Yes, retrain. And what kind of work did they do? They started to be a scrap dealer. So it was a very good time to start to collect scrap, copper, iron, and other metals, you know.
Scrap metal.
Yes, and that was also because of the war. It was lack of metals in all countries, you know, so all the metals was very expensive, so it was very easy to collect and so on, and they were selling it and made quite good money on that time. So, and other people, other Roma during more like the 50s, 55 and so on, they started selling a second-handed car. And they took it down to Tanto and repairing it and fix it, and then they sold it. So this is, I can say it's most of the Roma today, even today, they are selling cars. So a few years ago, I was sitting and counting out how many dialects are we speaking here in Sweden. And we are now speaking between 13 to 15 different dialects of Romaniship. Means that there are so many different groups. And now, as we were speaking about the national minorities, and we got a national minority
status?
State, yes. But it wasn't not only the group, even the language has a very special status, means that we now have the rights to be official with our language, means that all authorities, they have to make translations over official text. You have the right, for example, in a court, to speak Romanes, and they have to bring you some translator, and also in the hospital. And that's why I was looking how many dialects do you think we are speaking here? So between 12 and 15, 14, 15 dialects. I can't give them all with name, but you know, they are, take for example, there are Roma from Poland, there are Roma from Czech. Here, lots of Czech Roma in south parts of Sweden, in Malmö. And even the Czech Roma had different dialects.
Not so many, but yes, they do.
Yeah, they do have.
So in terms of size of the communities or the size of the speakers, what are the biggest dialects or the biggest Romani groups in Sweden?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, it's forbidden, you know, to make a register.
Sure.
And you might heard about the police register in Sweden. I was the one who took the police to the court. But I had my own theory, but maybe it's wrong. I mean, the resande, the travelers, they say that they have the longest belonging here in Sweden. Means that in 500 years, according to me, there should be 1 million.
Oh, you mean...
the population.
The population.
Yeah. But anyway, the resande, it's a very big community. And also the Arli. The Arli Roma, because they came to Sweden. They came to Sweden during the 90s when the Balkan War was. So I would say that they are nearly more Arli Roma than it is Swedish Skelderers. So...
and I know that this is very difficult to assess, but do you have any idea how many Swedish calderas there are? Are we talking thousands or tens of thousands?
Yeah, I would say it's just about 15,000.
15?
Yeah, just about. I'm not really sure, you know, but just about 15,000, because the government made one calculation. So if you read the governmental people and they ask how many Roma inhabitants is it in Sweden, they say between 50 and 100,000. And I mean that
all of them,
but that is
together.
Too long gap. But I think there are much more Roma in Sweden.
Do you feel that there is some kind of hierarchy among those 5 groups? I know this is a sensitive subject, I understand as much. But do the 5 groups get along fine? Or is there any tension?
Of course. When it comes to important questions, then they are together. Because now we have a governmental meeting maybe 3 times a year where they are meeting the Roma group. And I think it is nearly 20 persons they are meeting there, and they are from different groups. In that, when they are speaking together, they are, of course, together with the important questions. And they have the chance to tell, my group want this, my group want that, and so on. But of course, so many groups and so many Romas, of course they have different opinions. But I wouldn't say there is a hierarchy or something. No one says I'm better than you.